Forum today. We'll go ahead and get started. So we have a pretty packed agenda. After my announcements, our Executive Director, Doug Davenport, will say a few words about Prospect SV after this. And then we have a great speaker lineup. We have 2 local government agencies speaking about their challenges to building EV charging infrastructure. So we have Sarah Moore, Sustainability Program Manager at the City of Berkeley, and we have Rachel DeFranco, Sustainability Manager at the City of Fremont. We'll then hear from our corporate sponsors, Senna Soysal and Paul Breslow from EDF, and Amy Matsuo from Marubeni. And then we have a few startups who will talk about their emerging innovations for EV charging. We have Anurag Kamal from Electric Fish, Nathan King from It's Electric, and Venus Jenkins from ChargeNet Stations. And finally, we'll wrap up with an open discussion. So please feel free to put your questions in the chat box and we'll do our best to address them. So we'd also like to thank all of our sponsors. As always, we really appreciate your support and couldn't do this event without you. We'd also like to welcome our new Peer Forum members. Thanks so much for your interest in the Peer Forum. And currently our ZEV Fleet Peer Forum, we now have 63 members. I think we actually just got one more, so we have 64 and 39 agencies and growing. So thanks all for being here. All right, we'd also like to announce that we have a new Peer Forum member space on our updated website. You know, we've really created this new portal as one space for you all to access all the meeting resources and funding opportunities. We also have the Ford Pro fleet electrification planning tool, and then a member contact list so you can get in touch with each other. So please check it out. Taylor will put the sign up link in the chat. Please do sign up to access these resources. We'll be uploading today's meeting slides and recording on this portal, and we'll send out via email as well. Okay, with that, I'll hand it over to Doug.
All right, good morning, everyone. And the commercials are almost over. I just want to let you know a couple of things. I'm excited that you're here. Thank you for being members of this Peer Forum. You know, we made this Peer Forum possible, you know, through the support of our sponsors, but, you know, really with the willingness of all of you to make some time to get together, you know, connect with not just each other, but connect with expertise and new information. We have a format in these Peer Forums that really enable us to, one, have you connect with leadership and with the kinds of resources that you need to move fleet electrification forward. Access to funding opportunities. You may have seen even one this morning in your email, and there's also meetings like this where, you know, you're connecting with the future. We wanted to have this discussion because it really helps fit, you know, our mission as an organization. We're here to help expand the conversation about innovative technologies and the ways that it can be applied and the ways that it can have impact. That is just as true for fleet charging and fleet management and EV charging infrastructure as it is for mobility and the broader conversation around energy and lots of other areas. Building networks like this is very important because you are the ones getting the job done. People want to talk about progress. You're getting up every morning and you're doing it. We respect that greatly. Third of all is to make progress. When we're together and when we can connect with each other, connect with opportunity and connect with the future, there are ways that we can work together as we move forward. We can partner on grant-funded projects. We can assist you with early deployment. We can work together on early stage pilots and make those things meaningful. It's really important to us that we can do that. We think that it's not a natural thing in the world for folks like we get together to come together and work in this way. So we're really excited that we can do so. Let's go to the next slide real quick. I do want to say that, you know, our Empower Procurement Grant, which is funded by the California Energy Commission, has been instrumental in our ability to Work with lots of folks like you to better understand some of the procurement related issues that come with executing, a change such as electrification of a fleet. And it's a grant that we can thank also for financial support in doing meetings such as this. I also just want to really quickly announce, and there'll be more information on email, the Empower Procurement Grant. Under that grant, we can now provide you technical assistance. So we can actually work with you and help you with planning and help you with the early stages of your fleet planning execution under this grant. If you're interested in that, and you should be sure to get back in touch with us. There will be an announcement going out, I think, fairly soon, Melissa, possibly even this week, that will give you more details on that. So just watch for that free technical assistance that we can provide you through Empower Procurement. So we're going to have a conversation, and there's two sides of this conversation, and they're both equally incredibly important. One, we've got two great leaders from the public sector, both sustainability managers working for cities in the Bay Area, Berkeley and Fremont, that are going to talk about not just their technical and pragmatic challenges in getting EV charging infrastructure built for their own fleet electrification programs, but some of the challenges that they face in getting charging infrastructure built in their city, even for everybody else. Now, this is important. I just want to acknowledge and honor the fact that cities are moving forward quickly with fleet electrification programs, not just for the let's say security and efficiency of their own assets, but because they're demonstrating social leadership. And so if City of Berkeley and City of Fremont cars, electric vehicles are rolling around the city, demonstrating the city is taking a leading role in climate, it really does send a message to the rest of the community and to businesses and to residents alike. So this is a really important conversation, and they're going to talk about why this is hard, and sometimes why it's hard is not entirely apparent to everybody. But we're going to have a second conversation, which is about people that have an earnest interest in helping enable that change and helping bring innovation into that space. We recognize this is a complex issue, and we've got both representatives from some of our corporate sponsors as well as startups that we really like that are bringing really important change and really important innovation into this space. And so we're going to have this two-way conversation about what's hard today and what's coming. So with that, I'm really excited to introduce Sarah Moore. As a resident of the City of Berkeley, I'm really grateful for what Sarah is doing to improve the City of Berkeley in this way, and excited to have her speak. So Sarah.
Thanks so much, Doug, for that warm welcome and the invitation to join you today. And I didn't prepare slides. I just thought about a few things in relation to this that I hope will be helpful for giving you some information about what we've been doing at the City of Berkeley. So I personally have been involved in encouraging EV adoption in Berkeley for about the last 10 years. And this work has included a variety of components. So early things really involved a lot of working internally to remove unintended barriers, things like removing the zoning review for residential EV charging stations. So creating just a faster ministerial building permit review. We moved then to an online building permit application for EV charging stations that was low cost and issued the same day. We've done things like outreach and education events. One sample is we've now had 4 Ride Electric at the Farmers Market events, including our first in-person events since the pandemic started, which was just this past October. We also have experimented in a variety of ways. We operated a pilot program for 6 years that allowed residents without off-street parking to either create a space on their private property to install a charging station, or to do so at the curb adjacent to their residence for home charging. And we've done things like adding local requirements for EV charging infrastructure in new non-residential buildings and significant EV charging readiness requirements in residential new construction. So we've made a lot of gains in a community that is really interested in electric mobility and electric vehicles. So in 2020, EVs were over 6% of Berkeley's vehicle registrations. And we're also very fortunate that we've got elected leaders who are supportive and who have shown really innovative leadership. Things like making a commitment to become a fossil fuel-free city as soon as possible, no later than 2045, and pushing us to transition the municipal fleet to e-mobility. So that is indicative that bikes and e-bikes are also in that mix, ideally by 2030. So we've got a lot of great things going for us, and still there have been challenges, particularly with EV charging infrastructure. And as you all know, there is little of a chicken and an egg set up there in terms of what leads what. I would say, like most communities, we of course have some businesses that provide EV charging, typically for visitors or customers at places like grocery stores and medical offices, or for their employees at larger office complexes and the like. And then the city has installed EV charging infrastructure, and that primarily has been for public charging to date. And I would say that there is an increased interest in installing charging infrastructure for our municipal fleet, and ideally to have some applications that could do both, which has been a challenge for us so far. So some of our other challenges have included, of course, just the installation expense and other obstacles related to installation. For City of Berkeley, there's really very few grants or programs that apply, and that's particularly true for fleet charging. I would say our earliest public charging installations were through grants, the California Energy Commission specifically. And then more recently, we've done both public and fleet charging installations as part of capital projects. So as part of our new downtown parking garage, as part of a renovation more recently to a mental health clinic and to our North Berkeley Senior Center, we've used those opportunities to include charging stations. Those two most recent, for the intention is for fleet charging. But in general, there's few grants or programs available. We also just in general have a lack of parking spaces, which means a lack of spaces for EV charging. And that's particularly at the scale that is typically really attractive to vendors or might be needed for grant opportunities. And even as we work now with our CCA, which is East Bay Community Energy, who has been helping us in this space by providing a fleet assessment, looking at transitioning to electric for our municipal fleet, and now offering some support or potential products for fleet charging and DC fast charging. We still just have limits in the available parking available. We've also had challenges regarding operation. So that includes things like the maintenance of our existing charging stations. Even with purchased operation and maintenance plans, there have still been problems that require attention from our electricians. And our city, I think like most, really is critically understaffed in specific areas right now. And that does include our electricians. So that's really hard on us when something's not working and it needs more troubleshooting than we are necessarily able to give it. We've also started to discover, as our charging stations have been around and in operation longer, that there may have been some issues with their original installation that now are causing issues. And I don't think that's unusual either. So these things all just add up and make it make it difficult to both provide and assure that the charging will continue to work. And then, of course, also in relation to operation, there's ongoing expenses associated with the network servicing, with the operation and maintenance, with, of course, our time of use electric rates and demand charges that may be triggered as part of that. Also, I would say another challenge for us as a city, and again, I don't think this is unique, is just we really don't have dedicated staffing for electric mobility. You know, it's a little bit of my job, it's a little bit of some of other people's jobs, but the demands and needs in this space have grown, but realistically, our staffing capacity for it has diminished. And I throw this out because I think that points to the fact that turnkey opportunities that include installation and all aspects of operation are therefore very attractive to our city, and I think many others. So I hope that gives some background. I'm going to turn it over to Rachel from Fremont because she has so much experience in this area too, and of course curious to hear the rest of this meeting today.
I'm going to invoke MC's license and just ask you
Fair
a couple
enough.
quick questions, if that's okay, before we
Sure.
Rachel. Two things: space and maintenance. On space, is it that space is just rare across the board, or are you having a problem with kind of a micro issue where you would like to have charging available, but there's just no physical space there in order to install an EV charger?
Got it. I would say it's a combination. I would say in general, Berkeley is a built out community that has prided itself on and is very fortunate to have good public transportation. We've worked hard on our walking and biking infrastructure, and we, do not tend to have as much parking as some other communities would. So it's both, we have got lots of residences, residential development that has no parking at all. But even when it comes to things like fleet, our municipal fleet, the majority is at our corporation yard, but our fleet is scattered throughout multiple sites. At some sites, our fleet is parking on the street, just like any, just like residents and everyone else. So there is both a limited number of parking places, and often it's very tight. So at our corporation yard specifically, there are a lot of vehicles, historic buildings, other things that physically make that space very, very challenging. Okay. And as we do look to install charging infrastructure there, we're realizing that in some cases, there's going to have to be hand trenching because of the complexities of the utilities and other things in the space there. So of course, that makes the costs increase dramatically as well.
Great. And as to maintenance, thank you for that answer. As to maintenance, you mentioned, hey, some of the early charging systems you installed maybe not have been installed properly and such. Are there durability and reliability issues with older vintage EVSE that you feel might reduce its useful life? And two, how is the upgradability factor right now with your current EVSE?
I think in general, I would say our stations have operated pretty well and have continued to operate pretty well. I think that the issues are starting to surface now are more like, was this wire really the right gauge? And are things starting to short out? And as they are used more frequently, and of course, looking at opportunities to add additional limits to the service capacity that's in place, and opportunities to increase it, which of course also adds cost. So I don't know, did that get at your question?
It did. I mean, some of this has to do with maybe having, early adopters get the privilege of experiencing the learning curve. So
Yes.
really appreciate that answer. With that, thank you so much. And Rachel, I'm going to do the same thing to you, but Rachel, would really appreciate your comments from the city of Fremont. And thank you very much for being here.
Sure, yeah. So I think Sarah said it all. I'm done. She's really thorough and great at explaining the challenges. I think just quickly, a lot of the same things apply to the experience in Fremont. The main difference, I would say, just kind of starting out, is that in Fremont, parking is an inalienable right, and we have so much, kind of surface lot parking, street parking, and anytime that folks in our community feel that's getting infringed upon by higher density developments, there's quite a bit of outcry. So the considerations around space when it comes to EV charging in both public and private lots is pretty different in Fremont than it is in Berkeley. And we're very different communities in that sense. But a lot of the other things that Sarah highlighted are very similar to our experience. So, just to kind of start out, Fremont has really high EV ownership levels. Our 94539 zip code actually has the most EVs out of any zip code in California. And I think in terms of EV ownership to population, we're second only to Palo Alto. We've done quite a bit in the EV space. And again, like Berkeley, I mean, there's not really a dedicated person to this work. A lot of the time it falls on me, but there's quite a bit of coordination and sometimes lack thereof with public works and fleet maintenance. And so, a lot of it is a balancing act as we really learn to take on this new territory. We have been kind of in a leadership role for a couple of things related to EVs the last few years. First is under the last building code cycle, Fremont came out of the gate with some EV reach codes requiring 10% of parking spaces in both residential and non-residential to be EV ready and also equipped with charging stations. So that has definitely brought forward some lessons learned. In particular, when we look at residential or non-residential, there's a lot of different building types that involves. I mean, we're talking about workplace and retail, which make a lot of sense for, level 2 charging to, have people plugged in for, a few hours and then moving their car. But then when we get into the commercial and industrial space, which Fremont has a lot of, that type of charging infrastructure may not make sense. And we've had some experiences with that as some new developments have gone in, with hundreds or thousands of parking spaces. So, we're talking about, dozens or hundreds of new charging stations to be installed for, locations that might be, Amazon warehouses or other types of, commercial establishments that don't really have that, kind of core workforce that would be plugging in and charging all day long. And so, really we need to think about what are some of the infrastructure opportunities and new development related to fleet charging and in particular, medium and heavy duty vehicles, and how can we start to really incorporate that into our building codes. And that's something that I'm still grappling with and really trying to understand what we might do with the next building code cycle. So I wanted to kind of highlight that first, because that's sort of a different direction than a lot of the other things that I've been working on lately, which is related to our city fleet. So over the last few years, Fremont has made the news for having the first police vehicle that is pursuit ready electric vehicle. That was the Tesla Model S. And now more recently, we've brought in a Tesla Model Y into our police fleet. Our police chief now has a Mach-E. We just bought a couple of electric motorcycles, and we have about a handful of other plug-in hybrids within the police fleet for kind of other non-patrol related operations. So, we're slowly integrating in more electric vehicles into our police fleet. And that, kind of slow turnover brings with it a lot of challenges. So 2019 and 2020, I got a grant from the Air District to do a fleet electrification study where we really dug into, what are our big opportunities for fleet electrification in Fremont. And, I think one of the key pieces here is it's really important to know your needs and your opportunities as a city when it comes to your fleet, because the type of charging infrastructure you might need and the location of it is going to be very different depending on, the types of vehicles and the operations that you're looking at. The right sizing of your fleet could be something you want to get into. We haven't discussed that in a lot of depth in Fremont, but, in conversations with colleagues across other cities, a lot of the time pool vehicles, so maybe not the public safety vehicles, but all the other vehicles are really not being driven that many miles. They're used for short trips. EVs can definitely make sense in terms of, replacing an existing internal combustion vehicle without having any range issues. But do we even need that many vehicles in the first place? Or could we be looking at maybe other electric mobility options that are not, full-on automobiles, e-bikes and pods and things like that? So those are considerations here, and that can really be a much more difficult conversation with your fleet folks, but it could save your city a lot on operations. Another thing is to think about your fleet replacement schedule. So, every year there's a certain amount of vehicles that are going to be kind of retired out, and that is the opportune moment to replace them with electric vehicles. But unfortunately, if you don't have the charging infrastructure in place already to support that turnover, then your city most likely is not going to want to buy those vehicles, because you're going to bring them in and immediately be unable to use them until you get that charging infrastructure in place. So that's, with the fleet study, we were really trying to understand what are our charging needs, where do we need to put chargers, what kind of chargers do we need to put in, and I think one of the big pieces that I want to highlight is when it comes to public safety in particular, the charging needs may be very different than other vehicles. We came up with, numbers around, a couple dozen level 2 chargers, and then just a few DC fast chargers based on the driving habits of our police vehicles. But when we had conversations with PD and the folks that manage the fleet there, they felt that fast charging was essential for their operations. And they were trying to make the case that we needed fast charging across the board for every single vehicle that we're electrifying. And of course, that's a huge infrastructure investment. That's major electrical service upgrades, hundreds of thousands of dollars, in new transformers to support that, if not millions of dollars. And so, we're really trying to figure out what's the right fit. How many DC fast chargers do we need to support public safety, to make them feel, that they have enough redundancy and security for any situation. If, say, half of their fleet is electrified, they will have those vehicles to deploy when they need to. But at the same time, not overdoing the infrastructure so that, we are, spending, like I said, millions of dollars in extra overbuild infrastructure that is really unessential. A couple other things I wanted to highlight. There's some new technologies that could be, interesting to be considering as you're looking at fleet as well. Because this DC fast charger question is so kind of front of mind in what we're doing in Fremont, we've had some conversations with FreeWire, which is a company based out of San Leandro, and they have a battery boosted fast charging technology. So you're actually able to charge up this battery at a lower rate of electricity. You can pull power from the grid without incurring a ton of demand charges, but then you're able to dispense that energy more quickly into the vehicles because it's stored in a battery. So it is a good way to be able to kind of heighten your ability to have fast charging without having to invest significantly in all of the electrical infrastructure build out that you might need. I know some other folks have been trying to figure out charging where power capacity may be limited or unavailable. There's solar power kind of plug and play charging companies like EV Arc, where it's a solar carport integrated with battery and chargers. You don't have to have it connected to the grid at all. So you could put that in locations that might be a little bit more remote where you need charging as well. We've looked at that. It definitely is a little more expensive, but it could serve the needs for specific challenges. Something else that I've really been thinking about too is this movement to an electrified fleet. And then as we also look at electrifying our buildings, we're really moving from a space where the built environment and transportation are no longer very separate sectors, but they're very blurred, and they're one and the same. And so vehicle to grid integration becomes a really interesting question, especially when we're talking about public safety, because not only are we going to have electrified police vehicles and maintenance vehicles just for standard operations, but then in the event of emergency, we have a battery on wheels that we can deploy to locations that may need power in that emergency situation. And then we can dispense that energy on site. So it really starts to blur the lines of, when you think about the budget for which you're paying for this new equipment, you might be paying for it out of your fleet replacement budget, but then it ends up becoming, an emergency backup power system. Oh, for some reason my camera just cut out. Sorry about that.
We see your photo.
Yeah, you see my photo. So those are some of the things that I was thinking about. Maybe I'll pause here because I don't want to go over time, but I have a few other things I can add to.
Well, and we'll have time for conversation. A couple of things. I do want to mention for folks that again, we had mentioned this in the last Pure Forum meeting when we were talking about funding. Prospect SV does have a grant application into the California Energy Commission to directly address this question of, hey, you're putting lots of money into electric vehicle fleets. Why are you not just using that as a direct backup source of power, and what's really in the way? We hope with our partners, Berkeley Lab, and also with the guidance and assistance of our corporate partners that will be involved, to be able to really help make the case for the Energy Commission and the CPUC to start to enable that, because it is a cost efficiency issue. And also with regards to buildings, it is a space and really cost per square foot issue when it comes to providing static backup power at these facilities. In addition to it being a climate issue, if you're really talking about using diesel generators and other stuff like that. So that's interesting. Just I think a couple of questions. One of the things you said is, one of your long-term issues is that EV charging is inextricably tied to rights to a parking space, and we're going to use that parking space as long as we darn well please, thank you very much, and don't bother me. Right? That becomes a scarcity issue, which is going to be an issue of access. So I think that's an important point to make as we think about let's say things around that. Of course, your other issue, and I know this is near and dear to your Director of Public Works' heart, is the fact that a lot of the money you can get for installing EV charging doesn't help you install EV charging for your police force or for your public works force or for other areas where you don't want to necessarily make that fully public and accessible to everyone. You need charging infrastructure that works for you where you need it, when you need it. And currently there's not a lot of avenues for you to do that. So, it's only a space issue, a capacity issue, an upgradability issue, a social issue, and a cost issue.
Only.
Yeah. So we've got some ways to go, but this is good. I guess so again, thank you so much for those comments and for sharing some of the real challenges that comes with doing this. Because it takes a lot of work just to get to that next step down the road. I do want to just really quickly, if there are comments or questions by the peer forum members or from some of our guests for Sarah and Rachel. We have just a couple of minutes we can address those questions. I'm gonna borrow Q&A time from the end to make that available now. Any questions somebody would like to raise? Okay, we're gonna hold our powder until the end. If anybody does have a question, you don't feel like chiming up on the meeting, use the chat. We'll make sure we get the question addressed. Thank you very much. And we do acknowledge the City of Richmond made a comment and would like to have follow-up on Empower Procurement. So Taylor will do that. With that, Taylor, actually, we're going to be introducing a couple of presentations by our corporate partners. I'm really happy to introduce, and I think we want to bring a quick intro slide up. Senna Soisal and Paul Breslow from the EDF Innovation Center. EDF's been a long-term partner of ours and has a great interest in addressing the energy constrained, carbon constrained future that we're looking at here. And I'm excited to have them talk about what they're working on and how that applies to some of these challenges we've heard about this morning. With that, Senna and Paul.
Hi, Doug. Can you hear me? Can you see me?
Yeah, we're gonna stop sharing the slide. And
okay. I will attempt to share my slides if I can.
Okay.
Let's see here. It was great to hear the comments there beforehand. It's definitely an issue. I think, the challenge that we've seen for folks that are trying to electrify all over, given the space constraints. Let's see here. I'm going to try to click share. Let's see. It says screen 2 and share. Let's see. Doug, can you see my screen?
Yes, we can see your screen.
We can see your screen. I have unmuted myself.
Okay, great. Thank you. Well, so a pleasure to speak. Thank you, Doug, for letting us be here today. I'm trying to make sure I got. Well, let me know if I can't say the right thing. So I want to quickly introduce myself and Senna. So we are part of EDF Group. EDF is Electricité de France. In the US, we've been here for decades and one of the biggest renewables groups, EDF Renewables, based out of San Diego, and our energy services and trading group out of Texas, both top 5 or larger. We have a small group here in the Bay Area in Los Altos, about 15 people. That's EDF Innovation Lab. I've been here for about 7 years. So EDF Group is quite large. R&D, to put in perspective, is the size of, well, Doug corrected me recently, it's about half the size of LBL, so only $500 million or so, but to put that in context. So, we're doing a lot of work across the world trying to understand how to be able to improve the decarbonization of what's going on. And so with that, we have 2 missions. One is to do the research we're doing here, like a lot of the R&D groups, and also to be able to be involved in developing things. And a lot of that development is co-development, because we're not actually developing new products and services in our lab, but really to be able to do that open innovation part. That's what I manage here in the US, as well as identifying what are the new models, the technologies. And I think one of the things that Sarah said that sparked my interest was identifying the spaces and the opportunities. And one of the things that I've realized is that we have everything that we need here around us. The question is, how do we expose those opportunities? And it could be that there's a building that's got a great amount of capacity and they're done at 5 p.m. And how might we be able to combine, to be able to, let's say, put a small box there that's really cheap to enable some city or personal vehicles to charge there. We've done interesting research on that. I'm glad to chat with anybody about that. You see here some of the other topics that we cover in the lab, and glad to chat more about any of those. And I'll highlight that EDF's raison d'etre, our reason for being, has really been redefined over the last few years, as it is for many organizations, to be all about decarbonization. And so that's something that we're very focused on. And so with that, I mentioned we have many groups around the world and within California. I was lucky enough to be judging at a Caltech business planning competition about 4 years ago. And I met some interesting researchers working on how to be able to optimize EV charger design. And they had this problem with the solar there. And actually, I'd been part of the team that had built the solar on Caltech's campus about 15 years ago. And they're trying to do that optimization, and happened to be a small startup here in Los Altos we ended up acquiring a couple of years later, and that's called PowerFlex. And the reason why I wanted to mention is not only because it's a key entity that could support anybody interested in EV charging and microgrids and some of the DERs involved, but also to highlight that it's really important, I think, to think about it holistically. If we just look at the charger fleet aspect or the EV fleet aspect, or perhaps do a bespoke solar project, we're probably not going to get the economics that are needed, and we're going to be overbuilding things and underbuilding things. And so definitely glad to help folks think through that. Please feel free to call us anytime. And then the three aspects that I think we have seen that are really important, and I think each of the two speakers beforehand addressed them, is the aspect of smart charging. And what I think that means is really thinking about it within the context of the charging, both the design and the operation aspect of it, to be able to help our customers think about it more internally within the context of just the EV charging aspect. And then if we abstract upwards a little bit, we think about all the different DERs, those distributed energy resources, whether it's the solar, whether it's the storage, the demand response, the different aspects that can be combined with those, then we can think about how to optimize it both at that local building level for that meter and for the charges they're assessed, as well as the upgrades that might be needed. So I think that was an important point that Rachel mentioned, that is definitely one that people don't think about. And then the third part that she also touched on is that aspect of fleet electrification. And there's definitely the synergy and the two parts when we talk about the fleets. One is the fleet of vehicles, very obviously, and that's exciting to think about. But then there's the perhaps more boring but necessary infrastructure of the charging fleets and how to think about those. And one of the things, going back to my previous comment, is how might we leverage some of the existing infrastructure that's there, that's out there, and not necessarily have to pay for more of it. So those are some of the aspects. And one of the key ways that we've identified, and part of the reason why we loved the PowerFlex, the company that we acquired, is because of their ability to understand that just because somebody arrives at the office first and they plug in doesn't mean they necessarily get to be that purple EV charger getting charged first, because their needs may be not that they need to be powered immediately, but rather that they could be charging throughout the day. And so how might a software system think about that to be able to keep the power limit low, those demand charges low? And I'm sure many of you are aware that demand charges can often be half or even more of the electric bill on a monthly or annual basis. And so that's an important concept. And so with that, I think one more slide here, I apologize. This is a quick example of it, just in terms of if you're not using some type of adaptive load management, then perhaps your upgrades and the utility and the permit will only allow you to perhaps put in 18 chargers because they assume they might be turned on to the maximum. Whereas if you are to be able to use something like that, then you could perhaps be able to include many more chargers. And it's not that we necessarily expect for all of those chargers to be used during the day, but there are parking spaces that people want to be able to plug in and charge. They don't want to be constantly having to leave their meetings or whatever their important job is to come out and move their vehicles around. And of course, we do expect that all the vehicles are going to transition. And so many, if not most, or all parking spaces in different places will be electrified. So that provides that opportunity. And so with that, I'll turn it over to Senna.
Thank you, Paul. Hi, everyone. Now I will continue with the DR integration part. So DR integration is important to achieve the optimal design and operation of the EV charging. And when we say DR, that concept includes microgrids, nanogrids, solar, electric storage, demand response, and more, as Paul mentions. And it's important to achieve the optimal solution for economics, resiliency, and decarbonization. And this optimal solution comes from the different combinations of DERs. And EV chargings, they create more benefits when they are combined with the DERs. In the next slide, Paul, can we continue with the next slide? Thank you. So one of the key things we identified as R&D center is the DR integration tool to EV charging infrastructure. And that tool we developed here optimizes the design of PV and battery storage given the EV fleet load to avoid the utility upgrades. And this web-based tool is capable of modeling the behavior and performance of a car park equipped with solar panels and EV charge points with on-site batteries. And it increased the reliability, reduced cost, and increased sustainability of the EV charging. And here is the high level of EV charging infrastructure design with some of the key inputs and outputs. For instance, as an example, some of the inputs we use here is like normalized PV generation, EV load curve, time of use rates, solar day types, and as an output, we achieve getting the optimal capacities of solar PV and energy storage with optimal power received from the grid. And next, I want to continue with the fleet electrification, which also includes design and operation of vehicles and the chargers of the fleets. So fleet electrification actually requires strategies and studies, and it's a complex journey. It requires different solutions. So the planning process starts with the choosing the right electric trucks, then choosing EV charging solution provider for the electric fleet, then estimating the energy consumption, estimating energy cost, and purchasing electricity, then understanding the hardware options, designing and building the infrastructure, then managing the EV charge electricity cost, and of course ensuring the maintenance of the infrastructure. So with fleet electrification on the rise, utilities, they have a unique position to support fleet operators, also because electrification can benefit both utilities and fleet operators. The right charging strategy is the important aspect here. And it's important to base the decision on on data, not the assumption. So for that, we can look at what fleet electrification studies tells us. Mainly, they give the best fit analysis, range insurance, cost analysis, and environmental impact analysis. But without the right study, fleet electrification strategies can be challenging. So next, I want to talk a little bit about the fleet electrification tool we have. So in the markets, there are like various tools available with different levels of complexity and sophistication. So EDF R&D tool, which is called Celeste, is a tool that evaluates EV suitability of commercial fleets. And based on the vehicle GPS data, the tool models the EV behavior to evaluate the vehicles who could switch to EV with minimum modification. So that's all for today. And thank you for listening. I hope this information will be useful. And if you're interested about these two tools I mentioned, please reach out.
Very good, Paul and Senna. Thank you. Appreciate that. As these tools and assessments become more broadly available here in California, we love to make sure that folks are aware of that. So please stay in touch on that, and we'll make sure that this forum is able to connect with you all. Thank you so much. So next we have Amy Matsuo from Marubeni. I'm excited. Marubeni is a company that you have not heard of, but what they do, you have definitely heard of. So this will be an exciting presentation, and there's a lot of good information about what's happening in the future there. So Amy, with that.
Hi, can you hear me?
Yes.
This is Amy. Yeah, this is Amy from Marubeni, and yeah, thank you for having me today. I'd like to share our insight of what is the important in the high power EV charging station market. So just one moment. Can you see the screen?
It is there now. Okay.
Okay, great. So as Doug mentioned, we Marubeni doing many things. So we are basically a Japanese trading and investment company, and we have really global footprint with 133 branches in all over the world, and also many consolidated companies, many group employees in all over the world. And we do many things from trading of the coffee, low coffee, or generating of the power, operation of the houses. You can imagine how we work in, and also we are facing many various kinds of markets. And one of our business is EV, supporting, accelerating the electrification of the vehicle. And we are deep diving into the EV infrastructure market, and we are partnership with Signet. Signet is Korean EV charger manufacturer, and I believe they are the third largest DC fast charger manufacturer. And we started to work together with Signet from 2011. So we have more than 10 years experience in this market. I think this is very good experienced company. And right now, our main customer is charge point operators such as Electrify America or EVgo. They own and operate the charging station, and they are focusing on more than 150 kilowatt capability chargers. So this charger, maybe you can see this one in your near station. And also they have the station-wide footprint Electrify America has. And also they have some ambitious plan that they're gonna boost up to 10,000 charging stations by 2025. So I believe it's a huge investment, and this this plan accelerate the electrification. And next one is also we are working with EVgo. They are really also big charge point operator, and they have the plan to work with GM. And also yesterday, I believe they just released that they're gonna have some partnership with Toyota for supporting their electrification. And this, yeah, also we are distributing 350 kilowatt charger to them. And I'd like to show some a configuration how it works. So basically, we believe more than 150 kilowatt charger is very important for the market. And first, one and two, number one and number two are right now using for Electrify America. So basically, one power cabinet can output up to 175 kilowatt. So when we install one dispenser and one power cabinet, and then the output is gonna be 150 kilowatt. And two power cabinets and one dispenser, and output is gonna be 350 kilowatt as number two indicated. And configuration number three is what we are installing at EVgo station right now. So when we install two dispenser and two power cabinets in one location, and then both dispenser can output up to 350 kilowatt by doing some dynamic power sharing. So this is the new feature of us. And I'd like to share some insight why high power charging, more than 150 kilowatt charging station needed. So the first point is, bipartisan infrastructure law, and so actually the government released the detailed plan of what is the eligible plan of the EV charging station to get the fund from the government, and I think they just released last month, and they mentioned that we need to put more than 150 kilowatt capability per port, and also they require 4 ports per site. So this is the requirement of the government to get the fund. So this is the key point to go into the more like a 150 kilowatt charging station. And also, I'd like to share what is the good use case for this like a 150 kilowatt hyper charging station. First is of course end-load charging for EV drivers, which is what we are doing right now. So, but it's interesting. But there is the data that like 95% of the EV drivers charge at home or sometimes at workplace. So they don't use basically this kind of public charging station. But at the same time, there like anxiety when purchasing the EV is lack of the public charging station. So they want to have it just in case. So I feel like even they don't use a lot, but they want to have it in public. So this is the point what I think. And also the second point is a little bit, this is the story in the future, but right now someone who has the access of the charging station at their home is right now purchasing EV. But as a next step, I believe like apartment dwellers, even they don't have some like a designated parking spot or access to the charging port, will purchase EV in the near future, and they want to use this kind of public charging station as a basic charging. So then they want to use like a similar as a like a gas station. So they just go into the charging station and just like a boom and finished it. So then they need more like high-speed charging station as a basic charging. This is the second use case. And of course, the third one is for the fleet market. So the battery size is big with like a bus and truck. So they need like a charging, more hyper charging station. And also in the near future, more like a trailer truck or class 8 truck gonna be electrified. And then I think they need charging station at truck stop or near the highway to charge. So this is the basic use case of the hyper charging station. But at the end, I'd like to share what was like a lessons and learned by working with Electrify America or EVgo, biggest charge point operator for more than 4 years. And the important things, what they are sticking to is first is charge availability. So so when like going to the gas station, I don't care like this gas station is available or not, but when like having the EV and then like always having some anxiety that like this charger is really available or not. So they gonna Google, or they gonna, maybe you know the site PlugShare. It's kind of Yelp of the charging station. So everyone uses this kind of app and like check the charge availability. And also charging success rate is very important. And like you know, it's very different from like just fueling the gasoline to the vehicle, but like to having the connection, electric connection with each vehicle. So of course we are following some protocol, like the charging protocol between the EV charger and the EV itself. But always, whenever new EV coming to the public, we are doing some physical matching test at our level. So this charging success is very important. And these 2 points will like connect to the customer, going up the customer experience. So customer experience is very important to motivate to electrify their vehicle. So this is lessons and learned in this market. But our ultimate goal is not only to electrify the vehicle, but also the decarbonization of the electricity is also important. So we want to have it at the same time. This is our kind of ultimate goal to accomplish more a decarbonization world. And at last, this is just introduction of the new development charger. So we are now thinking 150 kilowatt or 200 kilowatt capability with the all-in-one type, not dividing into the power cabinet and dispenser, because it's more easy to install. So some customer want to have this kind of charger. So this is our new development charger, but of course we have some this design power cabinet charger as well with this design. So this is just the introduction of the new look, and I think we are available in this year Q3. So yeah, please contact me if you are interested in purchasing this charger. So that's all from my side. Thank you.
That's excellent. Thank you, Amy. I just want to comment that we will share in the chat, and I'm going to assume that Paul and Senna and Amy, you would all be just fine with this. We'd like to share your email addresses with our peer forum members so that they're able to follow up with some curiosity. We're also able to share information and your slide decks on the peer forum space, so everyone will have information from these. We've got about half an hour left. Amy, thank you so much. We have about half an hour left, and we have three great folks that we'd like to have a conversation with. Taylor, were you going to introduce our startups? Oh, I'm going to introduce our startups. There's no such thing as a Taylor. He's not going to help us this morning. So I'm really excited to have three really interesting, visionary, but also very accomplished startups that are working in this space, that are thinking of the future. I am certain that they've heard some things today that they're going to be able to address in terms of some of the real pragmatic challenges that are happening out in just getting this done. Anurag Kamal, co-founder and CEO of Electric Fish here in the Bay Area, Nathan King of It's Electric, and Venus Jenkins of ChargeNet, all thinking deeply and working hard on the real pragmatic challenges of fleet electrification and EV charging infrastructure build out. I think we're going to go in that order. And gents, I'm just going to ask that you take about 5-7 minutes each, so we have a time to talk as a group. So with that, I think we're going in that order. Anurag, Nathan, Venus. So Anurag, take it away. We're gonna we'll stop sharing screen and allow you to start your talk.
Sounds good. Thanks, Doug. And hello all. Can you guys see my screen?
Yes, looks great.
Great. That's good. I can really cut my talk as well because there was a lot of data which was shared today about why exactly fast charging is required. At Electric Fish, what we're trying to do is build the next generation of electrical utility, which can ensure that there is resilience to the access of electricity, not just for transportation needs, the upcoming transportation need, but also having emergency backup power as our grid ages. The electricity grid was built back in 1900s only to support homes and a few power plants. Now we are trying to build electric vehicle chargers, especially public fast chargers, which are much more energy consuming than homes. To retrofit this existing electricity grid, it's much expensive to do it in the same centralized way as it was originally built. It costs $5 to $10 million per mile. Currently, to install a fast charger, you'll require $100K in just infrastructure upgrade, and it takes 2 years to make this installation. This whole process gets very slow, and generally there is quite a lot of bit of uncertainty in how exactly the demand of EV charging power and emergency load reduction will be required as the EV charging moves forward. All these problems are real pain for municipalities, electrical utilities, EVSE installers, and we built a solution. We started with building a hardware product. We call it the 350 Square. It's a 9 feet into 6 feet box, which has a 350 kilowatt hour battery and works with a single phase electrical connection, which is pervasively available and just gets 2 to 3 days to get actually installed, permitted, because it's just off the shelf permit. It has enough power to provide backup power to 40 homes for a 6 hours long blackout, but still with that low power connection can power extreme fast vehicle charging at 350 kilowatts, which is state of the art, which you might have seen today as well, delivering up to 140 miles of range in just 7 minutes of charging. And it is a plug and play installation. That's our patent on integrating everything into a single box. We don't need to do any side preparation. It can be just dropped and activated. But this solution itself wasn't enough. We are trying to build this utility of the future. And that is why we build products to augment how exactly we're going to deploy the solution. First, our community resilience score tool is targeted towards helping utilities and municipalities and cities figure out where are the best locations to deploy this distributed infrastructure. We use specific data sets like hosting capacity of the electricity grid, where exactly EV demand is going to show up, and also what is the probability of an outage based on a climate disaster. Then we go ahead and deploy our units there, and then a real-time optimization engine runs and calculates what should be the state of the charge of the batteries and how exactly we allocate energy for reserving for backup or providing EV charging, which is happening on site. We collect this data, feed it back to ClearScore, and that's our whole product suite to build this future utility. Our customer and market models are focused first towards convenience store owners, the lease model, in which it'll be a zero-cost subscription for them, and they can make around 6,000 to 16,000 per year from just EV charging revenue, EV charging and backup revenue, and then also get up to 2,000 to 30,000 in just foot traffic. That's their primary method of revenue. And for franchisees and municipalities, we have this upfront sale model as well, in which you can buy and retain ownership of the assets and pay us a subscription fees to manage this as a resource. The value per year of such an installation would be 55 to 200,000, depending upon which location you guys are at and what is the local load for the system. Basically, we are competing with multiple cluster of companies like Agrico, Sunrun, which provide backup power, and Electrify America and EVgo, which do charging. But our true competitors are Electric Era and FreeWires, which are startup in their own right. Electric Era builds big batteries, which can augment existing installations, and FreeWires battery, even if it's integrated battery charger, a battery integrated with a charger, their battery capacity is too low to meaningfully do anything for the grid. And they are building 150 kilowatt solution, which will be which won't be state of the art in just 2 years as fast charging EVs come to market, mainstream ones like Hyundai. Where we are right now, we did a pilot with LADWP, Los Angeles Department of Water and Power. We just did the installation in just 2 days. We could skip the permitting process for electrical utility because we just used the 20 amp connection, which is available. And because it was a temporary install and we had a site owner permission from the site owner, that is the building LADWP itself, we could get the installation going so fast. Now, we have been recognized by multiple firms like Fast Company, Forbes, and also Edison Awards. And this team is super young, but experienced in terms of EVs, grid, and hardware space. I worked with batteries all my professional life. Vince built a company before in regulatory spaces. Nelly used to work for NASA building hardware products, and Paula currently goes to Stanford, who's leading the build out of our optimization engine. What are we looking for today? We are looking for pilot contracts and actual deployment sites in the upcoming year. Our availability of units. We already have signups for the first 2 units, which we're building right now. After the current demonstration, the 6 design validation prototypes, which we're building in Q3, we have some commitments already, but we'll be open to have 2 to 3 units deployed somewhere in the Bay. Doug, am I running out of time?
Yeah, you're getting real close.
Okay, cool. So I'll go faster. our goal is to reach a pre-production run of building 75 units per quarter by Q1. So looking for purchase orders during that time. So what we have done so far has proven that we can do extreme fast deployments, work with a low voltage connection, and we have got permitting suits like Black & Veatch, Lacey, and Jules Accelerator who are helping us define how exactly we can work closely with utilities. Finally, impact at scale. Our solution is not just designed to cut transportation emissions, but helping grid decarbonize because we add a buffer of capacity to the grid. And secondly, building resilience is not cheap. It generally ROI is much longer. By integrating these two solutions, we can cut the ROI of resilience much faster, helping utilities and municipalities build resilience. And finally, the CourseCo data tool helps us make sure that the access of the solution is distributed with equity as compared to just building storage in just affluent neighborhoods. So that brings me to the end. I will stop sharing my screen and we'll wait for the discussion.
All right, Anurag, and thank you. And again, Anurag, I just want to let you know that your slide deck will be shared with the full membership of the peer forum. So 36 now agencies will see this, at least in recording on our peer forum space. So next, Nathan, and It's Electric. Thank you so much.
Hi, everybody from Brooklyn. Hopefully you can hear me and see my screen.
Yep, it looks great. Thank you.
Okay, yeah, and it's snowing outside and I'm jealous of everybody over there on the West Coast. But I'm here to tell you about It's Electric, which is a company that we started to solve a massive urban dilemma. And that is, EVs have enormous potential, as we all know, to revolutionize transportation in cities. But currently, there's no public or private solution to quickly scale and provide EV charging for the millions of drivers who park their cars on the street. Here's the order of magnitude of this problem. There are at least 5 million vehicles who park their cars on the street just in the Northeast United States alone. And so these drivers are sort of stuck with internal combustion engines, which means we are delaying on urgently needed decreases in roadway CO2 emissions. Pollution from our ICE vehicles contributes to a shocking number of premature deaths each year. And then also there's just a question about equity. Drivers in the city should be able to have the same convenience and accessibility to electric vehicles that their counterparts in the suburbs have. So here's our vision for the future. We see city streets that are quieter and cleaner because It's Electric's curbside EV charging posts have become as ubiquitous as fire hydrants. And all drivers are then able to find convenient and affordable EV charging close to where they live. And our vision actually relies on building community. And so the core of our business model actually relies on connecting our charging network to existing privately owned electrical supply. This allows us to avoid a direct connection to the utility. We're connecting behind the meter, so to say. And it allows us to share a portion of our revenue with our host properties. There's lots of advantages for doing it this way, and I'll explain a little bit about that more later. But what's important to us is that our host properties become literal partners in the development of EV charging infrastructure for their community. Right now, the major EV charging companies are focused on regional growth and installations on private property. And there's very limited interest in the problems of providing charging for cities. And in New York City, for example, there are only about 1,200 publicly accessible chargers installed. And almost all of them are on private garages in commercial lots. And moreover, there's vast swaths of New York City where there's not a single a publicly available charger within a mile from where people live. And from the perspective of our competition, it makes sense to go after these softer targets and to satisfy the range anxieties. But still, it's leaving a huge portion of our population. 83% of Americans live in cities. It's leaving that population of drivers, that market on the table. And here's how we believe we're going to be able to rapidly scale. This is a cutaway section of a typical installation. Our hardware gets installed inside the host property unit, and we bring out a standard voltage connection to the curbside connection. This is actually no more complicated than what happens hundreds of times a day for EV drivers who live in the suburbs. They buy an EV and they put a level 2 charger in their garage or their driveway. What we're doing is that same operation, but we're solving the problem of permitting first. We will have the approvals in place necessary for these homeowners to put these chargers in front of their properties and provide EV charging for their communities. Because we can deploy rapidly, because our capital expense is much lower, because we're not making that direct connection to the utility, we can actually go and align our deployment with our community and municipal priorities, and not just where it makes sense from the perspective of the utility providing the EV charger. And that's going to be a huge advantage for us to actually try to get more chargers in place quicker in places that really need to see this sort of development first. When we started the company, we looked at what it would take as a business model and a hardware model to solve this curbside EV charging. So our charger hardware is sort of built from scratch or designed from scratch with this sort of curbside charging market in mind. One key thing that we are doing here is we need to keep this charger post as small and compact and durable as possible. So we will be the first charging company in the North American market to feature a detachable or user supplied cord. This is actually quite common in the EU, in the UK, where they do curbside. We're doing the same thing, and what it's going to do is to add a lifespan to our charging posts, because the cords are typically the first thing that gets damaged when it's publicly installed. And so this also keeps the footprint of the charger smaller, because you don't need to have devices to manage the cord when it's not in use. There's opportunities for us now that we have this sort of publicly accessible charger to meet other sort of civic priorities. A lot of our municipal partners we've been talking to are interested in seeing micromobility charging as well. And that's something that we see as part of the development of our product, not just EVs, but letting people who have scooters and bike and actually even wheelchairs. These are actually finding charging for these devices is a challenge for people who live in the cities, as well as there being an opportunity to provide other functionality embedded in the charger as well. And that's where we're at today. The company that we formed is based on this idea that curbside charging is inevitable, and we wanted to come up with the fastest and quickest way to get chargers out on the street. And we're really looking forward to hearing from some of you and what you think about what we're building right now. Thank you. Doug, I think you're muted.
I hit the wrong button. It happens. And now it's recorded for all posterity. I was going to say thank you so much from a balmy 65-degree Bay Area. Really appreciate that. And it is great to see, again, it's great to see somebody who's thinking intelligently about the capacity issue here and the distribution issue. So that's super cool. So last but certainly not least, Venus, we're excited to have you. Really appreciate you coming. Venus is COO of ChargeNet, and looking forward to hearing what you have to say. So with that, Venus, thank you so much.
Thanks, everyone. I couldn't agree more with you, Doug. Looking at Electric Fish and it's electric, it just makes me happy. At some point, we may even be competitors, but it's a nascent market where we all have figured out our niche spaces where we want to work. Okay, so I'll jump into our company, ChargeNet. Obviously, we're very much focused in a very niche market too, which is QSR, quick serve restaurants. Our tagline is we're transforming parking lots, heavily underutilized parking lots, into profit centers. Let me see. I'm not going to go over statistics because I think Nathan did a great job of carving out, very explicitly explaining the problem. So I won't spend time on this. But where I would like to spend time on is what is our product. So at ChargeNet, we provide a fully integrated platform. What that means is hardware and software. And like I said, we're very much focused on quick serve restaurants, because when the founders came together and we looked at where does it make sense for us to make the biggest impact and how we make charging convenient for the people, 90+% of the people who do not have garages or access to easily available level 2 chargers. So where it made sense for us was quick serve restaurants, specifically drive-throughs where you're sitting 5 to 10 minutes to get your food. Think about Sonic model where the food is brought to you. So what we are doing is working with our franchisees, utilizing that empty parking lot space to build a solar carport, energy storage, and of course, fast DC chargers. We're very specifically focused on fast charging because we believe it has to fit in the daily routine of our customer, 100 miles in 10 minutes or less. We also have our own software that is being developed on the back end, where we look at possible energy arbitrage opportunities during those high and low peak EV rates during the daytime. So quickly going over our customer pipeline, as of yesterday, the number has changed. Right now, what we are looking at in California alone, we have 155 sites. Like I said, as of yesterday, we are at 210 sites. We're looking to sign another large contract, which means we're looking to deploy about $150 million worth, 150 to possibly $150 million worth of infrastructure with our software integrating all the assets together. If anyone is interested, please go check out our first site that is almost completed. It's in South San Francisco, Taco Bell. And our partners obviously are Taco Bell and Golden Gate Bell franchisee. And like I said, we're onboarding a couple more partners. I wanted to focus on operations a little bit, just because that's what my role is, and that is a lot of upfront work. And listening to various conversations, I could relate to some of the pain points very easily. But bringing it back to where we could make the biggest impact was quick serve restaurants, which are disproportionately in disadvantaged communities, DAC, low income, or opportunity zones. So keeping that upfront and center for us is how we are looking to develop our portfolio the first year, and the next year is 50% of our sites that will be developed this year will be in those DAC, low income opportunity zones. Right now, our portfolio is 50-50. Half of our sites are in Northern California and half are in SoCal. What does our footprint looks like? It is pretty close to this, where we have battery storage, 6 fast DC chargers, and about 80 kilowatts of solar. The second point I heard in some conversations, I wanted to also call it out, that customer experience matters. Even if you are looking at it as we want to make it convenient and easily accessible. Along with that, it matters how your chargers operate, how you respond to the chargers that break down. I'm sure any of us who have had EVs over the last few years, and if you have gone to charging stations, there are some obstacles and some learning curve involved. So keeping that in mind, at least specifically for the operations team, I heavily focus on that customer experience. So our chargers being at Taco Bell's, being at these 100+ locations, this is publicly available fast charging network. We're working with our vendors to have very tight SLAs where if something breaks down, that information is easily communicated to our customer, as well as we get that charger fixed in less than 5 working days or so. Why that matters to us, because I have run into those exact problems, plug in my car, and just sit there on my phone. 5 minutes later, what's happening? The car is not charging. There's no notification. So we have really thought about all the pieces of customer experience. This canopy is brightly lit. These are not in locations where people may not feel comfortable charging. Also, our software is seamlessly integrated into our partners' app. So you can order your food and order your charging from the same app. And lastly, but the most importantly, is that drive-through. Hopefully over the years, that line will reduce to 1 or 2 cars. And now you're not sitting idle in your ICE car and having large efflux of GHGs. So those are a couple of key points from operations perspective, and I'll share my ask too. Since we're building this network and it's a very large network quickly expanding, some of the challenges we have run into is obviously these are, I think it was Electric Fish who said this, building infrastructure is expensive and it takes a long time to get that ROI. Where I'm going with this is the federal and state incentives have definitely helped our business model, have helped ChargeNet, but these are complex and not easily accessible to everyone. Larger companies who have a lot more resources and can build algorithms, it seems like they get the lion's share of these incentives, and sometimes it may come off as the smaller players don't get to play in that space. So my possible solution is, if there are city, state, federal incentives, having some knowledgeable resources, webinars, and just having access to someone to speak to makes a huge difference. And then the next two quickly I will cover is permitting process and utilities. I think everybody has covered utilities. It's an aging grid. It's very hard, but we have to work with the utilities. And there what I could emphasize is as cities, as state, we just gotta continue to reinforce that this is in the public's good, and we need to align, inherently build business models properly. So we're looking out for the majority. And then the permitting process, I would quickly say, since we are dealing with few cities, really appreciate them. Some of them have been very supportive of bringing green, clean energy infrastructure to their cities. And I thank you so much, sitting down with us, talking to our engineers. My only ask is that the technology is improving, the certifications are changing very quickly. So it would be great if some of the cities could also allocate some of their budget on continuous education, keep up with what the code is, what the latest technology is, and what the latest code is. And I think that's my only ask. It was quite a bit.
Excellent. Okay, thank you to all three of you for being part of this meeting and for showing folks what you're working on and what's coming. We've only got a minute, but I wanted to each one of you take 10 seconds. You collectively, your technology represents mobility, ease of installation, flexibility, and kind of integration with services. Now you're all kind of more focused on let's say the more immediate market of commercial and residential and folks like that. Maybe just make a quick 10-second comment. How do you see your company serving fleets in the future?
I can start basically recognizing where exactly these units should be installed and serving specific use cases, helping fleets cut down their charging costs, and accelerating how fast they can upgrade their infrastructure.
Great.
Yeah, and I can, one thing we'd like to point out to our municipal partners when we're talking to them is that our distributed network of level 2 chargers can be used for city vehicles sort of as a backup supply instead of what you see is a lot of idling ambulances or police vehicles. When you have this sort of distributed network, there's lots more opportunities for that backup for a quick top up for a vehicle in use.
Great. Venus, on the spot.
I was just going to say the fleet operations, we have gotten quite a lot of requests to look at fleet operations. To be just very honest with you, for the first 18 months, that is not our focus right now.
You'll be there. We know you will.
Yes, we will be.
Yeah.
Right now,
Here's the important thing. The technology needs to meet the purpose, and I'm sure that the market is coming for this. So thank you all so much. We appreciate everybody taking a slice of their morning with us. This has been really great. Our peer forums will continue, and we will be having another Emerging Innovations Peer Forum meeting here in the coming quarter or so. Thanks again, and you all have an excellent day. Take care.
Thank you very much.
All right, see you.
Thanks, everyone.
All right, bye.